Maybe you don't know.
This time to build. 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 This time power. This time to build power. This time to build power. This time to build power.
What's up, everybody? I'm your host, Chris Hampton. Welcome to the Power Company Podcast, brought to you by PowerCompanyClimbing.com. Today's episode is a throwback all the way back to episode 3, when I didn't know if this thing would continue. But that was 265 episodes and well over 2 million downloads ago, so we're here to stay. And while we might be on break right now, making some format changes and prepping a new series, we'll be back with all new episodes this coming September. I saw a post yesterday from my friend Rannveig Aamodt. 10 years ago this week, April of 2012, she made a nearly fatal mistake while cleaning the anchors of a sport route in Turkey. She fell 50 feet to the ground, shattering her back, pelvis, arm, and both ankles. And we won't be going into what caused the accident in this episode, but you can read that story, including some heart-wrenching excerpts and a story that she wrote, right there at the link in your show notes. Instead, this episode is about her recovery, the physical and mental approach that she took, the resilience and the will that she showed. It's about how she went from clinging to life to climbing harder than ever, and what it took to get back on the sharp end and past the specter of that moment. Let's get into it.
Maybe you don't know.
But the training part, like the fight, that happened like I think almost immediately when I woke up in the hospital.
This time to build. This time power. This time to build power. This time to build power. This time to build power.
You were just saying that sometimes it's hard to remember how it felt. Like it's kind of, or to go back to that place. So let's talk a little about that.
Yeah. It can be hard to like remember how it actually felt. Like I don't want it to like, if I'm gonna explain what happened, I don't want to like make it sound like nicer than it was. And sometimes it's hard to like tap into like how it actually was and not just make it like, oh yeah, I recovered, everything is good now. And yeah, like through the whole process, it could be kind of hard actually to tell people how I actually felt, because you want to say that everything is good. You want to be positive. You want to like, I'm doing better. But like a big part of you is still like, no, it sucks. It's, and you're dealing with a lot of pain and dealing with a lot of, like issues that can be hard sometimes.
Yeah. So, and it was it's a hugely inspirational story to a lot of people. And it was pretty heavily publicized. And your husband, Nathan, who's an amazing photographer, took these really great photos of the rehabilitation process, and you wrote this great story. And his part of your story that he wrote really sticks into my head. I think about it pretty often, actually. So do you think it being as publicized as it was, even though it was you doing a lot of the publicizing it because it is such an inspirational story, do you think that kind of leads your memory to different places than it might have otherwise been?
I've been like really conscious about that the whole time, trying to like make it real, like tell people how it was, and like in the middle of the process, you I wanted to stay positive. I wanted to like not into like go into these deep places sometimes. So
It's hard.
yeah, it's hard. So you want to tell people that you're great. You want to like make it sound good because that's what you want to tell yourself. That's how you want it to be.
Right.
So
yeah.
it's kind
and
of
if
like
you put that out there, maybe that's what's actually
what's
going
actually
on,
happening. But the whole time I've been trying to not make it sound like better or easier or than it is.
Sure.
Because like talking about it has been a good way to feel that I can give something back. I've like received so much help through this whole process and like help other, and I know how I felt that I was like reaching out and trying to find other stories that were similar to me. There's so many unknowns and you're like really seeking for help when you're in the situation. So I feel like what I could do now is to be that for other people who's in the same situation, and I've received a lot of feedback that I'm helping many people out there, and
I'm sure there are people everywhere who are getting inspiration from it. I am for sure. I'm going through a shoulder injury right now that's incredibly minor compared to what you went through, and that definitely is a source of strength and inspiration for me. What exactly were the injuries that you had? Can you even list them all?
yeah, I was quite a mess. So yeah, I took the fall. I landed with my knee with my legs bent. So
you landed on your feet?
I landed on my feet, like almost like as if I was in a chair, sitting in a chair.
Oh, okay.
So I kind of like saved my knees, but my ankles took like basically the whole fall. So I shattered my ankles. It was kind of like a mash of bones and tendons ripped off the bones and nerves. So it's kind of like a porridge of bones and tendons.
Yeah.
And then, so a lot of fractures in the ankles. The talus bones were broken, the calcaneus, multiple. I think it was like 13 bones in there who was affected. My knees were fine. I had like 2 fractures in my pelvis and 3 vertebrae, compression fractures in 3 of the vertebrae, L2 to L4, and then my elbow. The tip of my elbow broke in 3 pieces.
So did you fall back onto your elbows?
So I was like falling and like and kind of got like a little twist as I hit the ground, I think. So my whole like right side got more affected than the left. Kind of fell on my right side, I think. So my right elbow got screwed up and but I didn't hit my head or anything, so I was I was lucky in a way.
And were you lucid through most of this? Is all this memory, or is it? I mean, do you remember the rescue?
Yeah, for sure. I was conscious. I remember. So what I remember is like clipping out of the anchor. Started falling. I thought that Nathan had like given me a little bit of slack to give me like a bonus fall from the anchor or something.
Yeah.
And then when I felt that I was accelerating, I understood that something is wrong. And then I don't remember like the the middle part of the fall, but I remember like it's like my body remember the impact of the fall. I don't really like consciously remember,
right.
But I can kind of like remember the feeling of hitting the ground. And then I think I was probably out for like a couple of seconds or something, and then I woke up from like people slapping me in the face and asking me questions, and I remember, then I remember it was like in and out of a cloud almost. part of me was like
Sure.
in this bubble of light and knowing that this is I'm dying now. This is and this is the end. But it was like it was no fear, nothing. It was just like light, and I was okay with it. And then, like, as people were talking to me, and I had this voice in my head telling me, like, no, it's too early. You're not ready.
Yeah,
and
your
then I
body's
kinda,
going into survival mode.
yeah. So then, and then I was like in and out of this stage, kind of where like I felt the pain and everything, and then I'm back again where I just see the situation from outside of my body almost. I see Nathan being all scared, and I'm like, oh, this is so typical Nathan. He's so scared. He's so worried. And I'm like, oh yeah. And then then back to this like crazy pain that I can't, like, I don't know if I can describe it even.
Sure,
it's, like
sure.
different than anything I've experienced.
So they rescue you, take you to, you were in Turkey, correct?
Yeah, I was in Turkey.
Take you to a Turkish hospital.
Yeah, so
when you were, do you recall the moment where you decided, where you made the decision that you're going to get back? Did that happen in the Turkish hospital? Did that happen after you were flown out of there to back to Norway, right?
Yeah. So I was in Turkey for about a week until I was stable enough to get back to Norway. They actually came from Norway with a private jet airplane picking me up and flying me back. So pretty lucky to be from Norway in this situation. Do I remember if there was, one thing about this whole experience is that I really got to know how it feels like to be in the moment.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of room to think about other than right now. So it was like, I think it's probably like a survival mode that happens. So it was I kind of had the feeling the whole time that I am gonna, at one point, I am gonna survive this. I am gonna go through this, whatever happens.
Right.
If I lose my
spirit
legs,
was still there.
Yeah, that's exactly. I felt like pretty right afterward that I knew just in myself that whatever happens, I'm gonna get out of this somehow. With legs, no legs, climbing, no climbing. I still have
your spirit was there. You knew that no matter what was gonna happen physically, that you were gonna come out of it the other side just fine.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm not gonna say that I was never scared. Of course, being active is such a big part of my life.
Sure.
And I was terrified, of course, of losing all that.
What were the doctors telling you? And I'm sure that first few weeks it was probably, there wasn't a whole lot of prognosis being given because they were still figuring things out and working through things. But when did the doctors start telling you, and what did they tell you about what your athletic future might look like?
They didn't even want to talk about it. I had so many questions. I was probably the doctor's nightmare. I wanted to know everything, and in the beginning, they were just forget about climbing, forget about everything right now. You're just so lucky to be alive. So there wasn't a lot of, especially for my ankles, there wasn't a lot of prognosis because it was
right.
There's so many bones and jelly in there that has to come together, and hopefully it would come together enough so I would be able. They thought that I was going to be able to walk again, and then, but it was back and forth a lot. The first, I would say 3 weeks to a month, you can have even if they put you back together, the bones are back in your body and you're screwed back, it's like you can have complications. Like my talus bone was broken, which doesn't have a lot of blood supply. So like before things stabilize, you kind of don't really know if it's gonna
healing up
correctly. And yeah, so you can, if you go online and read about this, you can read all these horror stories, where people have to amputate. And
Yeah, sometimes that's a really bad idea.
yeah, sometimes that is really bad.
It's lucky that your story's out there though, because your story's a positive story.
Yeah.
In this internet sea of horror stories.
Yep.
So there's
maybe like after about a month, I would say, I was back in Norway. Things started to like, started to like stabilize itself a little bit, and I knew that my back was gonna probably not be pain free, or I didn't know if it was gonna be pain free, but I knew that I didn't need to like have any surgery on my back or anything like that. And my pelvis it was just about time for it to grow back, and try to do as much as I could to later on in the process to make it pain free with exercises. And yeah.
So there's an image. It might be my favorite image from the whole photo series that Nathan has. And I don't know if it's everyone's favorite image, but I've looked at it a bunch of times since I've been rehabbing this shoulder. And it's just an image of your arm up, above the headboard of the bed, and you're holding two weights in your hand. And I don't even think you can see your face in the image. It's just your hand sticking up over the headboard. Yeah. And that image speaks to me of so much resiliency and determination. So what I want to know is, did that determination just gradually happen? Was there a moment where you decided you were going to climb again and it was going to be better than it was before? Or is that something you held off on making any big goal, and you just waited to see while fighting the whole time?
Yeah, like for the climbing, I was just putting that aside. Actually, honestly, I was having it as a goal and as a motivation that I wanted to get back, but I was also like ready to give it up. I was gonna, but the training part, like the fight, that happened like I think almost immediately when I woke up in the hospital. I was like, it was. Yeah, I needed to know that I did everything I could do to make it, like, this situation to come back. I know that I wouldn't be able to live with myself if I heard like 3 years later that I could have done more. If I did more, you would have like recovered more. If you would have just
worked a little harder.
Yeah. And that happened like immediately. I just knew that whatever happens, I'm gonna do the best I can, and I'm gonna have to like dig deep to find that. And like I'm sure, like when I asked for those weights, everyone was like rolling their eyes and be like, "What? She has one arm that she can move, and she's gonna lift weights."
Yeah.
But for me, it was like, I think more than anything, just a thing to like remember who I was. Remember in really the like important. The hospital, everyone is like, God, you're like, I just want to remember who I was, basically, and that I was gonna fight hard.
Yeah. See, for me, I went straight to the couch after my shoulder injury and just ate ice cream. Maybe that's because that's who I am.
I don't believe you, Chris.
So fast forward a little bit, you're back to rock climbing. What are those first moments back on a rope like, and how do you convince yourself to even do it?
Didn't need to take a lot of convincing. I knew that I wanted, as fast as I was ready to try, I wanted to try. I was really excited actually to just, I approached it with an open mind. Either I like this, if I hit it, I'm not like, if this takes more than it gives, there is so much other stuff to life that I could do. I get interested in a lot of things, as long as I put my mind and energy into it, I can get into other stuff too. So I approached it kind of with like an open mind, and I was curious. Was I gonna be scared? How was it gonna be?
And how was it?
Yeah, how was it? At that point, it was like really hard to walk. And what I experienced as fast as I got on the wall, like even if my ankle hurt like crazy when I started climbing again, then I got a little weight off of them, and I could use my hands. I felt that I could move, so it was almost like a release to like I can move. I don't need to have this. Yeah, it hurt less than walking, which felt really good at that point.
Yeah.
And I also think that all the pain while I was doing is kind of like released a little bit of adrenaline.
Sure.
So it was kind of like a painkiller to a natural painkiller.
Yeah. And what about your mental state? I know those first times were on top rope.
Oh yeah, for sure.
What was it like when you decided to get back on lead again?
Yeah, that whole process is it's been taking a lot of work and a lot of time to get like comfortable.
That you're still working through. Some.
Yeah, I'm still I'm good. I would say I'm good now because I've spent so much I've been so mindful about my fear. I've been like picking apart what am I scared of? And I was, you could hear me like my death screams falling like 1 meter in the beginning. And in the beginning it was like real too, because I couldn't really take a fall. My ankles wasn't ready to handle the impact. So it's both like a fear of hurting in the beginning, because I went through so much pain that like the thought of hurting more was just like no.
Yeah,
so,
no kidding.
So it was like a process of like finding out what am I scared of? Is my fear legit? Should I like listen to it, or do I have? Is this something like that I can work through, and it's gonna be beneficial for me to not listen to this fear? So I just kind of like approached it like everything else I do in climbing that I want to get better. I was thinking like, oh, okay, accepting that I am really scared of falling, and I'm not gonna think that it's gonna go away, that I'm gonna like be fearless. But I knew that I had to like find a way to live with it, to deal with the fear instead. So I approached it like I was strength training, and like really
you systematically
worked with it, and with a intention of getting better, not get rid of it, but get better at it. And I think that helped me all like being conscious about your fear and like facing it instead of like maybe I wouldn't even have done this, like being worked so much with my, it's natural to be scared when you're climbing.
Yeah, and I think it's important that you just said get better at it instead of get rid of it.
Yeah.
So many people just think that the people that they see climbing these hard grades and taking big falls aren't scared of falling.
Yeah.
But I'm still scared of falling,
Yeah.
and I tell people that all the time, and they can't believe it. And I imagine that you, having had the accident, will likely always have some fear there, but that you broke it down into, I just want to get better at it.
Yeah, I want to
be able to manage it. That's really important.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think that would like be an advantage for all climbers to because at one like level or the other, unconsciously or consciously, we have to deal with fear when we're climbing. So I think I think it was a good thing for me to even if it was hard especially in the beginning, to go through it. I think it was really good for my climbing like now.
Yeah. Did you take any like specific steps? Like were there practice falls that you were taking or?
Yeah, for sure. So in the beginning, I was top roping. When I was ready to lead again, I would start taking like I was always climbing overhanging routes just so I knew that I wouldn't like
Save your ankles.
save my ankles. And that I would Um. So yeah, and so every session I had, one of the goals before the session would be over was to take so and so many falls. So that was what I would do in the beginning. Just start small, take like a little fall and then make them longer and longer, and set a set. Sometimes I would set a set of like, okay, I want to have like 5. I want to fall 5 times at least before the session is over. Yeah, stuff like that, and then after like I was confident with just letting go, like looking down and letting go. I was still scared of like letting go as I was doing a move. So I would like
when you're a little out of control.
A little out of control, yeah. So I would like just make it a little harder and a little harder, and I think it was important to me to just try to be more comfortable push myself out of my comfort zone and like try to be conscious in that state, to just be more comfortable when I was not.
When speaking of being more comfortable when you're not, we talked a little earlier over breakfast, and you were talking about something I hadn't really thought about, but it makes perfect sense, is that Nathan, being your main climbing partner, he was sometimes more scared than you were. Was that the case when you're taking these practice falls? And
oh yeah, for sure. For a long time in the beginning, it was both like good and bad. It was always good to have someone who kind of like knew what I went through, so you don't need to like explain all the time. It's kind of good to just have someone there who knows. But at the same time, he'd been through such a like trauma, and he was dealing with like post-traumatic stress for a long time. I think the whole process was like way more mental, like with fear. He experienced a lot more fear through the whole process than I did, I think.
Sure.
And so
your body was just
my body
doing
was
what it had to
dealing.
do.
Yeah.
And Nathan had to watch it all happen.
Watch it all.
And I'm sure the photos were a good way for him to deal with it.
Yeah, I think so.
It's not only a documentary process, but...
Oh, no, for sure. I was kind of like... I wanted him to document the whole thing. It would be... Because I knew, like, that I wasn't in a state... I wanted to remember it afterward. So I was...
Sure.
Yeah. So for him... I think it was hard for him to let go. He saw me almost die. He didn't want to like see me hurt again, so he'd be like a little more protective than normal.
Sure.
And that was good in the first state, but at a certain point you kind of like have to get out there, have to get over your head, and you just have to be scared. So I think climbing with other people who would see me without having the experience that Nathan had with me falling was better. They would see me as like I was ready at that point. I was ready to take fall. I was just scared, and then it would be good to have someone else to push me. So I think
someone else other than Nathan.
Yeah, someone else other than Nathan who didn't have all the experience of me almost dying if I fell.
Right.
God,
I can't even imagine what that would be like, trying to belay you again and watch you in that same situation at the anchors of a climb.
Oh yeah, God, that must have been like horrible. He thought that I was gonna die in his arms right there, and yeah, it's just like the whole process he's been through. I've been thinking many times that wow, I didn't want to trade position with him. Changing after when I was ready to like take falls again, I think it was good to change up partners, climb with other people. And and the same for Nathan. He had a lot of stress actually, and fear of falling too when he got back into
Yeah, I bet.
Into climbing. And like now, like 3 years later, uh, we've been working through this together, and now we push each other again, and we're really like do our safety checks and
Yeah.
make sure that we can
Of
leave the
course.
stress on the ground. We're like really particular about checking everything, checking our knots and everything, so we don't need to think about that mid route, you know.
Yeah, and it took you. It's you're 3 years out at this point, still working through some of the the residual issues, and I often see people come into the gym or something with this, oh, I'm going to get over my fear of falling today, and I think that's a big mistake that people make, to think that it's something that's just going to go away, like we talked about earlier. So let's go over your process again. Let's just look at it a little more in detail. When you first started leading again, were you purposely going bolt to bolt and then just taking, or did you jump right into trying to on-site things and climb into the unknown? Because I know the unknown is a bigger fear than falling for a lot of people.
Yeah. So for me, I would be really. I don't think pushing yourself too far is good, because it just creates fear. You want to just take a little step and a little step and a little step and try to be comfortable in that position before you like kind of go further. So what I would do is I would go in, I wouldn't climb any route that I wanted my partner to have climbed the route first, and kind of like I wanted to not have too many unknowns as I was going into a climb in the beginning. I wanted to feel safe. And I think like the first part of getting into climbing again was to try to feel safe before you feel unsafe. So I would be like climbing these overhanging routes, telling myself that I would just fall into air if I fell. I would never climb with someone I haven't climbed before. I needed to have a partner that I knew would give me if I fell, would give me a soft catch.
Right. Take away as many variables as possible.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That was the first step. And then the more I get the more comfortable I got, the more I would take small falls in the beginning and see how my ankles would handle it, you know. And the more I just felt comfortable that my body could handle taking a fall, then I would get into like the next step and saying, okay, I'm ready to climb something hard enough that I actually might fall. So I would like take it in like baby steps, feeling out where I was comfortable, and trying to, when I was ready, trying to like go past that a little bit in steps.
Was there? I find that it's easier for a lot of people to take unplanned falls on terrain that they already know. So you've done the moves, and then you fall trying to link moves. I find that that's easier for people than like trying an on-site and falling in unknown territory. Do you think that it was easier for you to have, Nathan or somebody go up, learn the moves, you go up and learn the moves bolt to bolt, or, taking small falls in between that are planned? Do you think it was easier for you to take planned falls or unplanned falls on terrain that you already knew because you knew you were physically capable?
Yeah, of course, because it's like it takes away one of the unknown. If you know the route, you take that part out of it. And then like as you know the moves, you get more and more into like just doing the move instead of thinking about falling. So the better you know the route, the more you can concentrate about the moves instead of falling. And if you just fall, you just fall. Like for me, it would be the fear would lie in like losing control, falling out of control, as you mentioned earlier. So knowing the route would definitely take one unknown out of that. So like what I would do in the beginning is usually have my partner climb it first. I would top rope the route first, and then I would get into leading it when I was feeling comfortable.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people, even people aren't coming back from injury, can take a lot away from that, because like I said, people just try to get over this thing in a day.
Yeah.
And it doesn't work that way. Sometimes it could take months or years, or but as long as you're taking it in baby steps, little bite-sized chunks, and just working through those little pieces at a time.
Yeah, and I think for me, like a big part of dealing with it is just to accept that you are scared. Like saying like it's okay that I'm scared, not something that I just want to hide or get rid of or not approach. It's just like I am scared. I want to. It's okay. Like
acknowledge.
I want to acknowledge this and I want to do something about it.
Yeah, you can't really face it until you've acknowledged it to begin with.
Yeah, right.
And making excuses isn't going to help you get there.
No. So yeah, it was a good opportunity for me actually to do something about it and to learn a lot about being scared and how to deal with it.
Yeah. So what's it look like now? I know you're still dealing with some of it. Are there things that have fallen away that you don't have to deal with as much, or do you kind of still go through the same process?
Like for now, it is mostly it's better than it was. I would say before the accident, almost, because I've been working with it so much. So at most days, I'm at a better spot now than I was before the accident, but I still have like flashbacks, and I still sometimes it could be like situations that put me back into it. Like for a while it was wind, and if I got cold, that would just trigger it, and I would have I would freak out, top rope or not top rope, and I would be like, oh my God, like I thought I was over this. What is happening? You kind of like lose control. I would like lose control of my own body more than I will, because it still happens to me, more than I've done before. Before the accident, I don't think fear would paralyze me. Now it kind of does. Now I'm like, I'm not functioning really. That happens less and less too. Just because I was like trying to find out what kind of situations that triggers my fear, and as I said, it's wind and it's and temperature. So and then I was thinking, well, I'm just gonna try to be cold when I'm not in a climbing situation. So I would like be outside being cold, not climbing, and just like kind of like re-teach your body that you're not gonna die even if you get cold. You're not gonna die if it's windy. So I just like approach that, just trying to expose myself in safe situation to the element that would trigger it, and I feel that it's like better now. I was in the Red River Gorge last fall, and I was climbing with icy cold fingers, and
I remember.
When we had like fire pits in the cave in there. So yeah, it's definitely getting better, and I have the situations where I'm like freezing up doesn't happen that often anymore. And if it ever happens, I'm like, well, it's okay. Like you can't
you can't beat yourself up over things you can't control.
Like it's sometimes, you're like, oh, I put so much work into this, I want it to be over, but then you kind of just have to remember, no.
Yeah, I think you've got a really smart way of dealing with it, whether it's something you intellectualized or not. I think it's you're dealing with it in a really intelligent way by by going straight to the fear and stripping away all the variables and making sure you're in a safe position when you're dealing with that fear. I think I can't imagine there's a better way to begin approaching any kind of fear of falling or fear of the unknown or fear of whatever. Any kind of danger that you're in, it's best to put yourself into a safe place and then deal with it slowly.
Yeah, I think that's it's been working for me. That's for sure.
So physically, are there any residuals now? I mean, you had some pretty intense injuries. Do your ankles limit you, or are you finding creative ways around your limitations?
Now I just have a good excuse for not carrying any or
You just
heavy
make Nathan
backpacks.
carry everything.
Yeah. No, I'm using it for all it's worth.
That's what a good husband does anyway.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, I have pretty like severe arthritis in a lot of the joints in the ankles, so I can't really actually carry very heavy backpacks for a long time. So I try to avoid the things that trigger it to get worse, like if not go for long runs or carrying heavy stuff and stuff like that, and go on bike rides instead of running. I still have to like change up what I would like most prefer. I would mostly prefer to go for a run if I could. I used to love that, but I would try to like change those things without thinking too much about it. And I still like, the interesting part is that after 3 years I still feel that it's not I'm still recovering. I'm
right,
still
you can
getting
still
better.
get physically better.
Yeah, I still feel like that I get better. It's kind of like the curve is not steep anymore, so it's kind of like hard to notice. But when I came back to places that I was back at like 3 months ago, I kind of remember how I felt, and if I go back there, I'm like, hey, I'm so much better now.
Yeah.
So I still get better, and I think working with my leg, I lost a lot of leg muscles, and I feel like the stronger my legs get now, the more pressure the more force the muscles can take off the joints.
Right.
So the more my muscles come back,
it's like putting armor around the injuries that
is.
can help it,
Yeah. And in the beginning, I was like really, I wanted my climbing strength back. So I think I was focusing a lot more on my upper body strength. And
absolutely.
Yeah. And I was doing some like more exercises, but now I'm actually getting back. I can go on like short runs and I go on bike rides, and I feel that helps a lot, especially biking. Being on a road bike is one of the few things where I don't feel like limited at all.
Oh yeah, that's really important to have.
Yeah, it's like a place where I can just go as fast as I can and like feel kind of like normal again.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note that this isn't just happening. I mean, you're putting work in. I got up at 8:00 this morning or something and came downstairs, and you're down here working out already.
Yeah.
So you're definitely putting in the time and the effort to continue making yourself better.
Yeah. I think I love that. That's one of the things that makes me feel good. When I feel that I put a lot of effort and work into something that I want, I feel good about myself. Makes me happy. And recovery, all the exercises is I've been on the other side. I know how bad it can be. Like if I can avoid that by doing like some exercises for my shoulders now and stuff like that to avoid injury, it's so much less, like it's so much easier to do that than to be injured. So for me to put in some hours in the morning to do exercises is kind of easy.
Now, what about did you do yoga before the injury?
Oh yeah. Yoga has been a big part of my recovery, and also, but I was doing yoga beforehand. Yeah, I was actually I just became a yoga instructor when the accident happened, so I never got to teach yoga, but I've always not always, since I was 15 maybe, doing yoga myself.
Yeah, and you told me yesterday that when you were recovering, you started out by doing chair yoga, and I think it's great that your ego allows you to step down to what a lot of people might consider a lower level. Not just in climbing, but in doing yoga, and in your case, it was walking, for that matter, and working your way through it. Is yoga something that you feel is instrumental in the physical and the mental and the psychological aspect of coming back to climbing?
The best it's done for me is actually that it's a really good measurement. I can, like, if I try to do a yoga exercise, it shows me where I'm uneven. If I do one thing on one side, and it's so obvious if I can't do it on the other side. I see where I need to get more flexible to be balanced. So it's a good tool to just see if I'm balanced. And I also used it as in the mental part where I was really scared. A lot of the chest opening exercises and the breathing was really good for me to use as a tool when I was dealing with a lot of fear.
Yeah, I bet. Do you ever, if you're at a rest on a route, does your mind ever slip into thinking about the accident, or thinking about the injuries or the physical limitations, or fear for that matter?
No, not if I start getting like scared, if I feel my heart beats, if I'm scared of a crux that is coming up or something, that's like, I try to at least like concentrate about my my breath instead. And I think yoga, like learning all this, like different breathing exercises, has been it's really transferable to climbing. So I try to focus inward instead of thinking about what's coming up, or
so you're using the things you practice in yoga, you're practicing those while you're climbing, calming yourself down.
For sure. So that's I think yoga is really helpful that way.
Well, I'm certainly ridiculously impressed, watching you climb in the red last season, and watching you or a year ago or so, and then watching you boulder yesterday. I'm really impressed with the way you move so easily in such a short time after the many injuries that you sustained. But I think what I'm most impressed by is watching how a boulder problem yesterday you were having a hard time with, and you'd found your own way because you couldn't do it the way all the tall guys were doing it, and you were getting frustrated over not being able to make this move as easy as you wanted it to be, but you kept trying it and kept trying it and kept trying it. And I think that's the biggest takeaway for me through your whole experience, is that you just keep at it.
It's one of the things that is the best thing that happened from this accident, I think, is that it just kind of took the whole ego and expectation and everything that is not important. It just kind of takes it away in a way. You time I don't have time for being worried about what other people think, or I don't know. It kind of was a release in a little bit. Not that I was too bothered about it before the accident, but it put it in a light. Dude, we're just rock climbing. Okay.
Well, thanks for sitting down with me and being nice enough to let me bother you and force you to talk about these things.
Thanks, Chris.
Thanks again to Rannveig for sitting down and having this conversation, and for being willing to let me repost this. I know rehashing these things isn't always the most pleasant thing to do. But we do this so that others can learn not only from mistakes, but to gain inspiration from the will and the perseverance. So that in a media landscape where big sins are the main story, we also get the stories of overcoming real obstacles, more than just bad conditions or thin skin. Real shit. That's what Rannveig's story means to me. You can find links to her and to her story right there in your show notes. You can find us at powercompanyclimbing.com, on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at Power Company Climbing. And I am actually on Twitter with my new podcast, Hip Hop Taught Me Everything, but Power Company Climbing is absolutely not, because we don't tweet, we scream like eagles.
Maybe don't know.
This time, this time, this time, this time, this time to build, 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 this time power, this time to build power, this time to build power, this time to build power. 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 This time to build. 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 This time. Cause Jah is the sinister character.